main event of the evening for the UFC Heavyweight Championship of the World. First up to the scale is the challenger. $240 for the challenger. Next up on the scale is the champion. $240 for the champion. All right, this is it. The main event of the evening. Guarantee you this will be a war, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. And now, live from General Motors Place in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, it's time! 5 rounds for the UFC Heavyweight Championship of the world. Introducing first, the challenger, fighting out of the blue corner. This man is a boxer and a street fighter. He stands 6 feet 4 inches tall, weighing in at 240 pounds. Fighting out of Toronto, Canada, Ryan the Prototype Alvarez. And now, introducing the champion, fighting out of the red corner. This man is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. He stands 6 feet 3 inches tall, weighing in at 240 pounds. Fighting out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He is the only man to ever hold Pride and UFC Heavyweight Championship titles. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the reigning, defending UFC Heavyweight Champion of the world, Antonio Rodrigo Minotauro Nogueira. And when the action begins, our referee in charge of this contest is Dan Miragliotta.
All right, guys, this is for the UFC Championship. I want a nice, clean fight. I want you to obey my commands at all times, protect yourself at all times. Touch gloves, come on out fighting. Back to your corners. Let's go, guys, fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Dan Miragliotta has called a stop to this contest at 26 seconds of the very first round, declaring the winner by TKO. And now, the new UFC Heavyweight Champion of the world, Ryan the Prototype Alvarez.
I'm here with the winner and new champion. Congratulations. Let's take a look at the big screens here for the replays. Looking at the finish, it was clear that he was in trouble. What's going through your mind after such an impressive performance?
I saw his eyes roll back, and I knew I had to jump in and finish him fast. I knew that if I gave him time, he'd recover. He's got a lot of heart, and he'd just keep coming.
Now, in your last fight, you came out on top and had a very impressive showing. Did that give you an extra level of confidence coming in here tonight?
At this level of competition, you really have to be on your game if you want to stay on top. I was really in the right mindset coming in, and I really got a great camp.
Any last words?
I just want to say a quick thanks to Dana and the UFC for giving me a chance to fight. I can't wait to do it again.
You look fantastic here tonight, and we can't wait to see you perform again. Let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen. our main event of the evening, the top of the scale is challenger. Next up on the scale is the champion. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, our main.
Ladies and gentlemen, this.
Come on, let's go.
Stop. Stand up. All right, let's fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Herb Dean has called a stop to this contest at 1 minute.
All right, I'm here with the winner. This is the shot here that ended the fight. Talk us through it.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to knock this guy out, Joe. He's a tough fighter. You know, pick on, really pick on the win tonight.
In your last fight, you managed to snag a win over another well-respected fighter. Did that help add your confidence level at all?
Yeah, you know, I knew this was going to be another tough fight. There's so many talented guys in the division. Each fight's going to be harder than the next.
Well, you've proven again tonight while you are the UFC champion. Tell us your thoughts on the state of the division now that you remain at the top.
Everyone's threatening to get this level of competition. You know, each time I defend this belt, the back across from me knows what opportunity lies ahead of him. And he'll do everything he can to win. I got to be ready for that.
Well, again, awesome performance here tonight, and we can't wait to see your next fight. our main event of the evening for the UFC Light Heavyweight. First up to the scale is the challenger. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the main event of the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. And now, live from the Bell Center in Montreal, Canada, it's time! 5 rounds for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship of the World.
Come on, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Herb Dean has called a stop to this contest at 20 seconds of the very first round, declaring the winner by TKO and still the UFC Light Heavyweight Champion of the World, Ryan the Prototype Alvarez.
I'm here with champion after another incredible performance. Let's take a look up at the replays here. Here's the end of the fight. You managed to land several shots here that your opponent was unable to withstand. Was that how you pictured the fight going?
It was a good stoppage. I was just gonna hurt him some more. And I could see it in his eyes that he didn't want it anymore. Thankfully, the ref, put a stop to it.
You seem to be very comfortable and confident out there. Did the fact that you were coming off the heels of another huge win help with that?
Yeah, my confidence is only going to grow, and especially if I continue to string wins like this. And I just want to thank the UFC for allowing me to fight. And I'm ready to go whenever they'll have me back.
Well, you've proven again tonight why you are the UFC champion. Tell us your thoughts on the state of the division now that you remain at the top.
Every time I step into the octagon, the guy across from me is the most dangerous opponent I've ever faced. He's hungry, and he wants this belt. To keep it, I gotta stay sharp and keep improving.
Well, it was an outstanding performance here tonight, and we can't wait to see you in action again. Let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Mario Yamasaki has called a stop to this contest at 49 seconds of the very first round, declaring the winner by TKO, Ryan the Prototype Alvarez.